Hello everybody, what's up? You're listening to I Was Just Wondering with me, Tom Salmon, the show that dives into music, film and games, and everything else in between. My guest on this week's show is Lydia Rui, who wrote, directed and edited her latest short film, This Perfect Day. We jumped into Lydia's film festival experience, how she got into filmmaking while studying media culture communications at NYU, working as Beyonce's videographer on the Miss Carter tour, and the cultural impact of Crazy Rich Asians. So, if you're running, stuck in a traffic jam, or sitting behind a desk at work, hope you enjoy my interview with Lydia. So, you're on the festival circuit with your short film, This Perfect Day. How's it going so far?
It's been really, really lovely, actually. Tribeca was an incredible first festival experience. Last year I did do Doc NYC, but this has been my first festival of such a high caliber for narrative, especially, and it's just been really relentless.
Was it last weekend you were there?
Tribeca was the premiere,
Right.
and then in a few days, actually, next week will be Inside Out in Toronto, but unfortunately I'm not able to attend, but I've heard really amazing things about Inside Out. It's Canada's largest queer film festival.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, apparently it's just like a great event. So I'm really bummed I can't make it.
Do people tend to sort of reach out after your film sort of like played and say, hey, like I saw this film? Maybe it's sort of an audience member or like a producer or some sort of like a member of the creative community sort of afterwards?
Yeah, it's been really lovely. I've had people who have found me. I'm not sure how they found me, but they'll reach out to me and just say how much they were affected by the film. Like people who are other crew, like composers, for example. Financiers have reached out to me, production companies, management companies, and other festivals as well. So there's been it's like a nice little, it's a nice afterlife, through the screenings. And Tribeca especially are really good because they do 5 screenings for public and 1 industry and press.
Yeah.
And they were all sold out. They're really kind of proactive about getting those seats filled.
I'm assuming you were there at all 5 screenings. Were you doing Q&As afterwards with sort of audience members as well?
Yeah, I was there for 4 because filmmakers are discouraged to attend the press and industry screenings of their own. Yeah, but I did Q&As for the other 4.
In terms of sort of the audience questions, were there any ones that sort of surprised you? Were there any sort of like left field sort of questions?
No, because the program itself is 6 films and the other filmmakers were there as well.
Right.
And actually, there's this other amazing film called Maya, who was in my program, who actually won the Best Narrative Short Film Award.
So in terms of sort of like programming, there's sort of like short films that are programmed in your block. I'm probably going to get the acronym wrong. LGBTQ, I think there's another letter on there as well. Together, or was it all quite sort of like?
Yeah, no, they weren't all LGBTQ plus. They were just shorts about expressing yourself, I guess, about identity and coming to terms with yourself.
You moved from Hong Kong to Singapore to attend an international Australian school, and that seems like a lot to unpack in terms of location, language and friends, and I just wondered, in terms of your passion for filmmaking, did that help you sort of adjust?
No, not at all. I didn't have like an art background at all. I transferred into film after junior year of university, actually.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't get to explore that side of me until much later, I feel. I don't have like film background or anything really. I did drama up until year 10 maybe. I did act in like school plays.
Right.
But the school plays didn't have roles for like, you know, I could never play Juliet or anything because I'm Asian.
Was I understand from my Asian friends that actually like pursuing a career in the arts isn't something that's generally, and I stress generally here, that's actually understood or supported by some Asian parents. And I just wondered, in terms of your sort of like peer group and your experience, is that something that you'd kind of sort of encountered as well?
Yeah, I think I'm really lucky that my mum, from an early age, I kind of always resisted going into business the way that my mum is in business. But there's always kind of an undertone of the need to be very financially successful, and that success is equated with commercial success. so when I first told her that I was transferring into film, she was admittedly like, media law.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, no, like, no, like directing.
Yeah.
So, understandable, because she came from absolutely nothing herself.
Right.
Both my grandparents barely graduated from middle school. And the only reason why she is where she is because of incredible hard work and scholarships and just, real survival. And so I think there is a bit of that. There's not been any career artists in the entirety of my family history.
Oh wow! So you're the first one. I mean, I wanted to sort of like jump into your experience studying at NYU, and what was that like as an international student?
Yeah, I really loved it. I was 18 when I arrived in New York. I didn't have any family there, and nobody came with me. But I immediately stayed in the Third North Dorm, and the dormitory environment just kind of was a really great experience, and a very easy way to make friends and kind of discover different pockets of American social structures, I guess.
Right.
I was originally studying media culture communications and found that I ended up taking a lot of non-media culture communications classes, and it's kind of, there's no cohesion really when you're studying a non-film course. You're kind of just like going to these different classes that you've elected to take on, whereas as soon as I discovered film and discovered Tisch and transferred into Tisch, it was much more a communal environment. All your classes are in building. There's the Tisch lobby and lounge, and everybody like gets to know each other, and everybody works on each other's projects. And I was really lucky because I was an internal transfer. I think I ended up meeting a lot of the grad students. So I actually ended up editing a lot of grad films.
Was editing, was it the first thing in terms of sort of like filmmaking? Did you get bit by the editing bug? I mean, what kind of came first for you? What was your sort of like first love in that regard?
Editing and shooting at the same time. I definitely got thrown into a lot of shooting, like videography. I would never like dare to claim I'm a cinematographer, just because I feel like cinematographers, they're like painters of light, and they're so technically advanced, and I'm not technically geared. Like, the way that I learn is definitely by intuition more so. But in terms of composition and a basic understanding of lighting and things, I think my peers naturally gravitated towards me and would just ask me to shoot things. And same with editing. I remember the very first film class I took was a documentary course, and like a summer documentary course. And my professor was like, "Oh, wow, you're doing all this like cross-cutting and stuff. Naturally, this is like what filmmaking is." And other people just naturally asked me to edit stuff.
It just came sort of like naturally. You're just like doing things you didn't necessarily taught to do, but maybe you were sort of replicating maybe sort of stuff you'd seen sort of before subconsciously in terms of your sort of editing.
Yeah, I think it was just subconscious. But again, I'm not like technically gifted. So I wouldn't say that, there's like editors who can do all these like really flashy things, and they also understand After Effects and all that. I feel like I'm much more just narrative driven.
What was the first program you learned to edit on?
Final Cut, because it was really intuitive. Final Cut 7 was really intuitive. I remember when Final 10 came out, everybody went crazy. And then then I was actually in the last year of NYU that still had Sight and Sound film shot on film. So they'd give you black Tri-X reversal 16mm film, and then you would actually edit it on the Steenbeck. So in my year, actually had a room full of Steenbecks. And you'd have to, physically cut and splice together films, just like little 4-minute things that you'd shoot in one day. But then now there's that's all gone. It's all been replaced by computers.
That's kind of sad, because I remember when I was studying film back in the day, we had to sort of do 16mm and edit on a sort of Steinbeck, and then you'd have your sound on the magic strips next to it, and you'd have to like splice it and like stick it together.
Yeah, that's actually really advanced. We never got to use sound. it was like images only. But I think you learn a kind of economy in your storytelling when you are forced to learn how to stitch together.
Just in terms of like your sort of like film education, I just wondered because obviously New York is like a hotbed for sort of independent and up and coming cinema. I know one of my most sort of transformative cinematic experiences while I was studying in New York was at the IFC Centre on 6th Ave. And I randomly walked into Harmony Korine's Mr. Lonely without knowing anything about it, and it just like blew my mind. And I just wondered, was there any particular moment when you were studying that you managed to get to see an unexpected sort of like film treasure that just really sort of like changed your perspective on filmmaking?
This is not really an answer, but like I do remember when I was 15 or 16 going to see The Fountain in the cinema by Darren Aronofsky, and that was a really game-changing moment for me that just like really shook me from the inside. And I immediately went and downloaded Clint Mansell's score and tried to make my friends watch it, and when they watched it, they just were like, this is so boring.
What? The Fountain's amazing. I love that film.
I know, it's like, actually I absolutely but you know, I was also like a sentimental teenager, so I could understand why some of my friends at the time maybe didn't quite vibe with it. But I saw Melancholia, that was pretty amazing, and I also saw Enter the Void.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I love Enter the Void as well.
Which was the first Gaspar Noé film I saw.
They're quite esoteric films, though, and also as I mentioned, sort of Harmony Korine and obviously Gaspar Noé and also Lars von Trier. They are seen as sort of like problematic.
I know.
My counterpoint to that is like, yes, that's all very sort of true, but in terms of just sort of unabashed vision and creative oeuvre and mania, I guess, to them, there's just something that's just purely sort of like cinematic.
Yes, I also loved the darkness of them. I think it was my first year at NYU as well, was when Drive came out as well.
Yeah.
And like, I just remember everybody was blown away by that.
It's amazing he's actually, Nicholas Winding Refn is actually colourblind.
So he's like really driven these bold visions.
In terms of where you feel that your creative energy sort of like comes from, and not to get sort of like too personal, but do you feel for you, does that come from a place of sort of light or darkness, or where do you sort of locate that within your sort of self that you feel you sort of gravitate?
I definitely think there was a selfish part of me. I saw the power of film to bridge a gap to other people.
Right.
Like, it was in a way selfish because I wanted to just feel like I was transcending the barrier of the self, you know, because from the very beginning, from the very first things that I made, just in my small little exercises, I could make people cry.
Right.
I could make people feel the way that I felt, and it just, it felt very empowering.
Right.
But I think I don't use it like in a sadistic way. I think I use it in a cathartic way.
Right.
Because I personally love healing pain. I think the way that nostalgia can be painful, I really love that kind of emotion that's the in-between, where it's like sadness tinged with optimism and happiness, or optimism tinged with like a little bit of sadness.
You were Beyonce's videographer for her Mrs. Carter tour, and there's one particular sort of like scene that I think that's sort of like a nice follow-on from that, was the moment when she stops the show and she finds that terminally ill young girl in the audience and her dying wish is to dance with her. And from the small clip that I watched, it seems a very sort of joyful, intimate and heartbreaking sort of scene played on the biggest stage imaginable. And I kind of wonder, for you, being a filmmaker, being behind the camera and actually capturing that moment, that there's no sort of like, oh, can we do that again kind of thing. I mean, what kind of stays with you about that particular moment the most?
God, that I was able to capture the climax of this young girl's life, basically, or one of the pivotal climaxes in her life, because she passed away, you know, not that long after.
Oh, okay.
And she was a very optimistic spirit, and she said to me, you know, when I die, because she knew that she was dying, when I die, I want there to be a celebration of my life. And she just really had this amazing, just an amazing spirit.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, that's okay.
But I mean, I sort of like teared about watching it myself.
I've never actually like really spoken about it.
Oh,
so.
Oh, okay. Are you okay?
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wondered, in terms of that time that you spent working with sort of Beyonce and catching those sort of like moments on tour with her, I just wondered, in terms of like now looking back on that particular experience. I guess my question would be, is that somebody's going to embark on a big tour, that somebody who's going to step into sort of similar shoes as you, maybe they're going to do like Travis Scott or Drake or Cardi B. Is there any sort of advice you feel that would be really sort of helpful for people that were going to do sort of similar to you?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, travel light.
Right.
Make sure that you have, and this is actually a piece of advice given to me as well, was wear all black.
Okay.
Just wear all black because you need to be as invisible as possible. And also then people can't tell if you haven't had time to do your laundry, because you won't have time to do your laundry, really.
Okay.
Be prepared to have a camera on you like 16 to 20 hours a day, every day, and be up at night, just like doing selects and things. Basically, it'll like really push you physically. Make sure that if you are in a relationship or any kind of situation, they're very supportive, because it's a hard one for most people to understand.
Right.
Just be as open as possible. Try to stay healthy and, just be yourself. Be really natural as well.
Right.
I think I was very shy and not so confident. I was 23 at the time, so I was the second youngest person on tour.
Right.
I wish I was a bit more brazen and brave and confident. Just be yourself and be confident.
So just jumping into this perfect day, as we sort of mentioned before, you'd screened at Tribeca, and it's also like the festival that I've spoken to before with other sort of like filmmakers. So I think it's like probably the biggest or one of the biggest sort of like platforms to have your film screened at. So that's a really amazing achievement. And I just sort of like wondered, were there any other sort of like ones you sort of had in mind when you were setting out?
Tribeca was actually one of the first film festivals we submitted to. We'd only submitted to 3 festivals.
Oh, okay.
Like Tribeca's the second, I think. I think we submitted to the late submission for South by Southwest.
Yeah.
But we had missed the Clermont-Ferrand cutoff date, and I think that would have been a very cool festival. It's obviously a very prestigious festival. And at present, we have been lucky to have received festival invitations to submit.
Oh, okay.
But otherwise, I think we've submitted to about 20 festivals. But I've just been doing all the festival submissions myself, whilst also doing the festival submissions for my documentary This Is Yara, which premiered last year as well. Yeah. So that's still ongoing, and it's actually quite it's quite time consuming submitting to festivals.
It is. The amount of sort of like paperwork and fees and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And just like the mental calculations of whether the cost is worth it.
And also, I guess, like figuring out sort of travelling to these sort of festivals, because I understand that if you've got a feature, they've got a stipend, they'll pay you to go. But I think like short films, it's kind of like you have to kind of like get there by any means sort of like necessary.
Actually, I received a Screen Australia government grant to come to Tribeca. So that was really nice, That covered my costs for travel and accommodation and the DCP as well.
So where did you shoot? Did you shoot in Melbourne? Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, Melbourne. It's was literally just, all the store scenes, that was all shot in one day.
Okay.
It's like literally just a weekend we made it, so.
What was your sort of elevator pitch for this perfect day?
A young teen walks into a store, and it's about this moment where expectation meets reality, I guess.
Right.
And it's very small. It's literally 6 minutes without the credits. It's basically just a moment unfolding in real time.
Right.
It's so hard to talk about because it's so small.
There's something that's really sort of like nice and intimate about it, and I just sort of was interested in your work as a documentary filmmaker actually influence your style and shot selection for this particular film, because it, in a way, it does feel there is an air of sort of documentary to it.
Yeah, except everything was storyboarded. I storyboarded myself everything, so I'm very meticulous about my shots.
Right.
And it played in the edit exactly as I storyboarded as well.
Right.
No changes. I think in terms of the perspective, I'm always asking myself, whose perspective am I telling this from?
What was the sort of best part and worst part of actually editing the film yourself?
I edited myself, which I enjoy because it meant I could just do it quickly.
Right.
And I had control. I, wasn't kind of beholden to the schedule of other people.
Right.
And so I could just immediately dive in and very quickly. And I did depend on friends for feedback. And I had very good feedback from friends that helped me just see that I could keep pushing it, basically. And it went really quickly. It was just I love editing. But it was just nice to just do it.
And did you shoot it over 2 days, did you say?
Yeah, it was 2 days. But basically it was more like 1.5 days.
Right.
Because one day was the car scene, but we were kind of beholden to the weather, which in Melbourne literally went from rain, sun, hail in one day.
Right. Okay.
And then
wow.
There was like a giant storm. And then the next day we shot all the interior stuff.
Obviously I don't want to get into spoilers, but in terms of the way that you shoot Michelle, she's a very sort of photogenic young woman, but there's also like an edge to her as well. And I wondered if that was something in terms of sort of that casting process. Was there a particular look or vibe that you were going for when you were casting that character?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like as soon as I saw Michelle, I knew they were the one. Right. So we only had 2 weeks to cast, and I had reached out to agencies asking for Asian or Eurasian actors. Also reached out to modeling agencies because in Melbourne there's kind of a real nice scene of people who are diverse and edgy and have that kind of vibe, very kind of specific urban Melbourne vibe, I guess. Right. That was definitely the vibe that I was going for. And I had seen Michelle on a Star Now website, which is a casting website, and marked them and written to them, and they hadn't gotten back to me. But that same day I went to a friend's screening, and in the foyer was Michelle as a volunteer.
Oh, wow.
And I was like pretty sure that's and I saw this morning on the website. Yeah. So I'm definitely going to approach them after the screening. And I sat down into the screening, and they had come and sat in the seat in front of me. And I was like, okay, perfect. When the film's over, I'll reach out to them. Yeah. And the lights come up, and they're not there. And I was like, oh no, I missed my opportunity. Yeah. Shame on me. And I go to the bathroom, and there's like a long line for the bathroom. And as it's finally my turn to walk into a stall, out comes Michelle out of the stall. And I'm like, okay, this is going to sound really weird. Yeah. But I've been semi-stalking you. And will you please audition with me? And Michelle is not even an actor. Right. She is a film student, also into directing. So yeah, it was just like really serendipitous. Actually quite shy when they came in for their first audition, but there was just a vibe. I just knew that they were right. So
because it's only sort of touched on very briefly the opening that there is a sort of same-sex couple. How important for you as sort of a filmmaker to tell that particular story was it, for you to sort of have that at the front of the sort of film?
There's not enough representation of those kind of relationships, and I don't think that it needs to be a focal point of a film to have that. Yeah. As the characters, like I feel like so many queer films are like it's all about that, but I just make films where they're just normal, like everybody else. Right. It's just they have like other inner lives beyond just that, and I am also myself non-straight. So why not represent more of that?
The sort of same way. It's something that sort of. I guess it needs to be talked about this. It's important, but in a way like it's not important. Just because you have like queer characters or non-binary characters in there doesn't need to be the focal point of their identity or the storytelling or even that person's at all. So I think for me, like that was a very nice element to the film.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm glad. Yeah. I share your sentiment completely.
I'd just love to get your hot take on how you'd get more women and minorities and underrepresented communities into sort of filmmaking, and what you kind of see as the biggest barrier to entry in 2019.
There's several things. I mean, access to resources, access to mentorship, perhaps also chip on the shoulder of other people who feel like their seat of privilege is being challenged. Also a fear among our own minority groups that there is a finite set of seats and we are all fighting for one minutiae piece of the pie. And the voices that get prioritized are voices that are tokenized.
Right.
I think is also another challenge, and that in a lot of spaces, the ultimate juries are still dictated from a white perspective of what a diverse race is. And I think that is also very problematic.
I mean, I'd be interested in your sort of take in terms of sort of like Asian sort of like cinema and representation. There was a lot said about Crazy Rich Asians. Just wondered in terms of like what your thoughts and feelings were about that.
I think Crazy Rich Asians, whilst problematic, still did a great, it, opened a floodgate for Asian storytelling, I think. So I think it's unfair to expect one film to represent the multitude of Asian experiences. And I think arguments like that were missing the point. I'm just happy now to see that financiers and studios are willing to just give Asian storytellers more opportunity, because I know the filmmaker and the author behind Crazy Rich Asians really struggled when they were financing the film to get studios to understand that they wanted an Asian lead.
Right.
Like they were like, let's film, but let's have the heroine be white.
Right.
Yeah. I think you're getting the point.
Yeah, completely missing the actual entire
story.
Yeah, the whole that's like, you might as well not make it then, because that just changes the story so sort of like significantly.
Yeah, I think in like one point of view I was listening, I think they apparently one of the Hollywood execs that they spoke to was like, yeah, okay, this, but like Emma Stone, right? Like,
oh my god.
Oh god.
I mean, she's a terrific actress, but you're just like, no, that just doesn't work on any level.
Yeah, like you're completely missing the point. So
I think it's unfair to put so much. I mean, in terms of, it's not the equivalent of Sex and the City's representation of like the white experience in any way, shape, or form. Like it's just sort of like pure fantasy in a way.
People who are Asian who are criticizing that even more, kind of. But then again, everybody is allowed to express their opinions, and I think that people who do offer criticisms are then perhaps just shining a light on all the ways that future filmmakers can address issues that maybe Crazy Rich Asians didn't have the opportunity to explore. So I think it's in a way it's all good, and I guess in this industry you just have to have a really tough skin and try not to read reviews.
Yeah. So I had one final question for you. What's your dream project?
I only have projects which I'm working on, which I'm hoping will be real.
Okay.
But ultimately, I would love to do a sci-fi on the scale of The Matrix.
Wow. Okay.
I think that would be so cool.
Is there anything there that or anything about sort of like technology or future societies that really sort of grabs you at the moment?
I'm really interested in alienation and belonging, and I guess these kind of like cultures of outsiders that form together and overcome the barrier of alienation. And I love I love multiverse stories. If I could have directed The Golden Compass, my own version, that whole trilogy, that would be actually probably like a dream.
Wow. Well, it's probably due a remake, so hopefully, in 5 years or 6 years' time, I'll be interviewing you again, and we'll be talking about the fact that you got to reboot the Golden Compass trilogy, or you've got your own sort of like Matrix, or better still, you're directing the Matrix 4. That'd be amazing.
Orphan stories. I love orphan stories. I realise.
So there you have it. I had a great time chatting with Lydia. Please do like and subscribe to the show on SoundCloud and YouTube, and drop a comment or two. And you can get in touch with me at the Salmoning01 on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Tom, and I'll catch up with you next episode.